Utility easements are common, so they are a very common thing. You'll find them in a lot of properties. You still own the property. The utility company does not, but it just gives them right to access the property. It's for the good of the community. In other words, they look at this as this is helping out the entire community. Hi, this is Anita from Real Estate Crunch. Today we're going to talk a little bit about easements, in particular utility easements, and what they can mean for property values. If you're looking to purchase a property and you find that there's a utility easement on it or a sewer easement on it, and you might ask yourself, well, is this going to affect my property value long term? Is this going to be a problem? Well, the truth is that typically utility easements, as a sewer utility easement, does not adversely affect the value of property unless the easement imposes tough restrictions on what the property owner may or may not do. You have to remember that an easement, any type of easement, is about a restriction on a property. So whether or not an easement will adversely affect a property value really has to do with what the easement says or what the easement limits. If the easement limits things, like, for example, somebody couldn't build on a garage, you couldn't build on a room, you couldn't cut down a tree, you couldn't plant a tree, you couldn't plant a garden, that could maybe affect the property value in that somebody might say, I just don't want to have to deal with this, I'm going to go find another piece of property. But it could be, for example, that maybe if you have a sewer easement on your property and you want to put in a swimming pool, you may not be allowed to do so because of it. So, really the whether or not an easement affects a property value has a lot to do with what the easement says and what the easement is about. If there's things that you want to do and the easement stops you from doing it, then it becomes a problem. Then it is actually could affect the property value. But if it's really not that big of a deal, if it's in an area of the property where it doesn't really matter, then it's probably not a problem for the property value. But it becomes a problem if you feel the easement is stopping you from doing things that you feel could increase your property value, then it probably is a problem. A utility easement is a common easement. And basically what it does is it gives the local utility companies the right to use parts or piece of your property. This could be a pre-existing utility easement, on a property that you purchase. And most chances are it could be an existing one. Or, the utility company may come and they may say, we want to put an easement on your property. If that is the case, the best thing that you can do is get yourself a lawyer so you can negotiate for the amount that you will be paid, onto your property for that easement. For example, the reason why easement's so important is it's more cost effective for the utility company to run a line straight through a property rather than around it. So they'll get a utility easement for it. What happens with this too is there's this thing called for the good of the community. So, if the easement is for the good of the community, then they might say that there's really not many choices on this because this is for the good of the community. The utility easement does not give the utility company the right to do whatever they wish on the property. They can stop you from doing some things according to where the easement is and how the easement is and where the lines are that they're placing onto the property itself. Here's a few things to consider about utility easements, and this is just generally in common because each easement can be so different. So you really have to understand the easement itself, and an easement is something that you should check out when you are looking to purchase property. Utility easements are common, so they are a very common thing. You'll find them in a lot of properties. You still own the property. The utility company does not, but it just gives them right to access the property. It's for the good of the community. In other words, they look at this as this is helping out the entire community. Utility easements are already taken into account when purchasing. So if you purchase a property that has a utility easement, the utility company is not going to pay you for that easement because they've already paid the previous owner for that. So it's already been taken into account with the value of the property. It gives the utility companies certain rights. They can come onto your property and do certain things. But yet their rights are limited. They can only do certain things on the property, but they're very limited on what they can do. And this should not be a purchasing deal breaker because, as I said before, an easement has already been taken into account for the value of the property and for what you're purchasing. So for most properties, it should not be a deal breaker, but at the same time, if you're looking to buy a property that has an easement on it, you should probably look and understand that easement so you know exactly what you're getting into and there's no surprises. This is Anita from Real Estate Crunch, and we hope you've enjoyed this podcast. We have a podcast that we've written about this, and it's particularly about sewer utility easements and how it affects the value of the property, but it really has to do with all easements. We'll put a link below, so if you're interested to find out more, go check out our blog on realestatecrunch.com. We appreciate you being part of our community and for listening to us. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.